Program planning is the process our league uses to identify its issue priorities for the coming year. It's our opportunity to advocate for issues and related activities we feel will be most impactful in our community. This short presentation provides an overview of the basics that you will need to fully participate in our program planning meeting and to make your voice heard. After completing this overview, you will be familiar with the 4 basics of program planning listed here. First, you'll learn about the basic process of program planning. This overview will give you a context for the more detailed information that follows. This can mean the difference between feeling lost in a program planning meeting and tracking and fully participating in the activities. You could even be a mentor for your fellow participants. Then we'll look at how to select issue priorities. This is not just the issues we are passionate about. It's also about selecting issues that will enable us to have the most impact in our community. Next, it's important to understand the requirements for taking action on our issue priorities and how to meet those requirements. And finally, we'll take a look at how to identify the possible actions we can take: a study, education, or advocacy. Now let's begin by looking at the what, who, when, how, and why of program planning. What is program planning? Program planning is the grassroots process of identifying our issue priorities. Our program focuses our local league activities for the upcoming year on our selected priorities, implementing required studies, and making plans for action through education and advocacy. Where, when, and how is program planning conducted? National, state, and local leagues each conduct program planning to identify priority issues. At all 3 levels of the league, program planning is the first step in adopting a program for the next 1 or 2 years. Local leagues like ours conduct program planning meetings annually. The membership submits their priorities to the board to develop a recommended program. That program is then proposed for membership approval at the annual meeting in June. The state leagues conduct their program planning in odd-numbered years. They ask local leagues for their input on the priority issues recommended by their state's board of directors. The resulting consolidated list of priorities is presented for discussion and approval by the delegates from the local leagues attending the state convention. At the national level, the League of Women Voters asks state and local leagues for their input on their recommended priority issues every even-numbered year. League delegates vote to approve the proposed program at the national convention. Why do we conduct program planning? The grassroots system of program planning means that the members of our local, state, and national leagues have democratically agreed to work together on their priority issues and to speak with one voice. This powerful unity enables us to maximize our impact by focusing our combined resources and efforts on the issues we have selected as priorities. Now that you have some basic understanding of the program planning process, let's look at the first step in that process: how to select issue priorities. While the emphasis of our local program planning is on local issue priorities, we also need to consider the priorities identified at the National League level. Local leagues are encouraged to use national positions to act in their own communities and to contact their national legislatures on identified national issues, following League of Women Voters of the U.S. guidance. The conversations that league leaders and members have with their representatives or senators can make the difference in how they vote. Most local leagues include elements of the National League priorities shown here, making democracy work, as part of their selected program. We should also consider the priorities adopted at the state level when thinking about issue priorities locally. The set of priorities adopted at the last state convention are shown here, and will likely not be changed much at the 2023 convention. Considering the priorities at all 3 levels of the league is part of the league philosophy of speaking with one voice. In our local league program planning meeting, most of our emphasis is on identifying issue priorities in our local community and how we can be most effective in taking action to impact public policy here in the Mother Lode. To narrow down our list of priority issues, we focus on issues that our league will realistically be able to impact and where we have a decent shot at being successful. To identify these issues, it's helpful to consider this three-part criteria. Issues, involving identifying the issues that have strong interest and support in our local league and from the state and national leagues. Capacity relates to our areas of strength in terms of expertise, homelessness, local government operations and their pending business, the democratic process, and other local issues such as forest management and water. Opportunity relates to such things as pending initiatives at the city and county levels, increased funding sources, and community interest. The sweet spot is where all three factors meet and is where we have the most impact. Finally, we need to take into account other additional practical considerations, such as those listed on the right. Once we have selected our issue priorities, we need to determine if we meet the basic requirements for taking action on those issues. This ensures we are basing our action on league research and principles and are sufficiently informed on the issue. When considering taking action on an issue, we need to look beyond the criteria we use to select our priority issues. The most important requirement is to ensure that our league has adopted a league position related to that issue and that it has done its homework in order to speak knowledgeably about it. We can take action only if we have a position for that issue. Now let's look at the possible actions: study, education, and advocacy, and the impact of having a position on our choice of the appropriate action. A position states the league's formal stance on a policy issue. It is formed through member-conducted study and agreement, approved by the appropriate board, and then used as the basis for league action. Each position affirms a basic philosophy in general terms, defines the goals desired, and establishes guidelines against which proposals can be measured. If our league has a position on a priority issue, we can plan to take action as education or advocacy on that issue. If our league does not have a supporting position, we need to adopt one before we can take action. There are two basic pathways to reach a position. One path is to form a study committee on that issue. Generally, a study takes about 2 years to complete and to propose a position for adoption by the league through membership consensus. A second and often shorter path is to develop a position researched by another league, state or national league, using a process known as concurrence. This generally requires a more limited study to become familiar with a position and to research the issue locally, and the subsequent adoption by the membership through concurrence. The text of the adopted position cannot be changed. Though study is often the first step in program planning and is foundational to our process, it is important to remember that the purpose of study is to enable action. As past president Marguerite Wells observed, to reach the league's aim, study is not enough. Becoming experts is not enough. Good citizenship requires not only knowledge, but ability to act. There are 3 basic forms of action we can take on issues we have identified as priorities. Either an in-depth or limited study, which is the first step in taking action if we have not yet adopted a supporting position. Education, which is a strength of our league based on our familiarity with hosting public forums and events such as the candidate forums. Or advocacy, which can include writing letters to media or legislators, holding press conferences, speaking at hearings and public meetings, adding our voice to a ballot measure campaign, or sending action alerts to our members. Congratulations! Now that you are familiar with the basics of program planning, you just need to take one more step to hit the ground running at our program planning meeting. Take some time to think about the issues you care about in our community. Are you willing to invest some of your time and energy in impacting those issues? What would your role be? Now, attend your league program planning meeting to lobby for your issue and join your fellow members in creating and supporting next year's program.